Hi, this is Dave Chenault with Skylight Systems, and in this video I'm going to show you how to migrate an InfoPath that's based on a regular SharePoint list over to a new list so we can build a Power App. And this is also going to have attachments, which is not an easy thing to do. So our tool, i2P Express, is going to be used to do the mapping from the source list to the new list, and it could be on-premise or in the cloud. It doesn't matter to us. So let's start off by looking at what we're going to migrate. Here I have a number of InfoPath-based list items, and I'm going to go ahead and open up one of those right now. Let's just take a look what we've got. And when I click on it, I can see that I have an InfoPath form here that's associated with an old list that I need to migrate. Now what I want to do is I want to migrate that into a modern list that has PowerApps as the form. And I want to get it into something like this, where when I click on it now I have a Power App that has the same capability. So how do I do that? I've got a couple of options here. One is I could sort of hijack the old InfoPath out of the main list here that I'm using today and replace it with PowerApps, but I don't necessarily recommend doing that. It's a little risky. And what I would suggest you do is you use our tool, i2P Express, to keep this stuff intact and then migrate over all of the data into a new list that we'll help you create with our tool. Go ahead and play around with PowerApps to get it to be just exactly how you want it to be. Show it to the users to get acceptance. And then when everything is ready to go, you can migrate everything over. You can then sort of do a switch so they can start using the new Power App form. I don't know that I would jump in here and start changing all of this around, especially if it's production data you need to keep for a long term. So let's see how we would do that with our tool. The first thing we're going to do is an inventory, and we're going to look at that site that holds the InfoPath form and see what other things are there. So I'm going to connect to it now. And when I do that, I'm going to scan for forms and lists. And I'll just do a quick scan here, but I could also do a full scan to get more information. Let's go ahead. Well, I'll do the full one. Let's do it. And I'll pause it and come back and talk about it in just a minute. Let's go ahead and run this. Okay, it's finished scanning that site that holds a lot of different InfoPath libraries and also forms. And the first thing I get is a report in Excel that says, these 4 forms do not have a template associated with them. And that is not a good thing for us, because what that means is we can't do any mapping or migration without the form that's associated with that, either InfoPath form or form library. So something happened along the way where these templates were deleted, and those you're going to have to figure out another way to migrate those. Lucky for us, that's not many of these. We have most of our forms, libraries, and lists-based InfoPath forms in good shape here. So if I scroll over here, I'm going to see a lot of information. I'm going to see the last time that it was modified, meaning the last time someone added something to this list or library. I can also see how complex it is. Is this thing a complex form, or is this thing something that's easy to do? The blanks mean that there's no template to evaluate. You can see those are missing. I can also see the last time that it was modified and who modified it. So I would know, who do I need to talk to find out if I don't understand some of the logic. And then finally I have a count, because I can see how many there are of each type. And that's going to help me decide, are these ones we're using, or are these ones maybe we have not used in a long time? For example, this one was last used in 2010. So 8 years ago was the last time. I don't think we're going to have to worry too much about this one, but some of these others, like here's one that I was just playing with today, that should be migrated. Anything with a 2018 in it, we're going to make those targets that we want to get on. But also notice those are very high, meaning maybe they have some code behind them. Maybe they have some extra complexity where they have repeating sections, things like that. So we're going to have to look at those very carefully and see what's going on with those, right? Okay, so anyway, I'm going to go ahead and look at this absence request, and I'm going to download that form template and open it up to do some mapping. So let me do that. I just hit this button. It'll save it out as a CSV file, and then I'll open up that in my schema mapping tool. So let me pause it a second while I do that. Okay, I went ahead and saved out the schema from that simple InfoPath that's based on a list. Now, if I had a more complex form that was based on a forms library, it's going to also be able to download that, and I'm going to open that up as a template. In this case, it just throws it out as a CSV, and I hit the open mapping. So I'm going to grab that right now and open it up, and that I already had open behind the scenes, but it opens up a dialog here that'll let us map from the old name into the new name. So here's the old InfoPath name with a data type, and then here's the new name internally in SharePoint, how it's going to be displayed, how it should be rendered out, and you could change the data type if you want to from the old list that you had in SharePoint to the new one. And the most important thing I want to look at is the required. I know there's kind of a funny field in here called employee name that's just text, and it was required in the old one, but I don't really want to use it in the new. I don't want to make it required in the new form. So by selecting that, I can make the new target list have this field, but it won't be required. And I'm going to go ahead and create a list to hold this new schema, these 3 columns here, along with if it's required in default view. So let's go ahead and create that list. Also, if you had repeating sections in the form, you can create a child list, and also lookups are supported. But let's just do the simple one now. I'm going to create a new list in my target, and I know that my target site is called this request migration. I'm going to connect to that, and I'll call it list 80, and I'll just say create that list. So it takes it just a minute to do that for me. And based on the mapping that I created, I'm going to have a new list in this site so I can migrate data into it. So I'm going to pause it and get that site open so we can take a look at it. Okay, I've now gone over to the target site, and you can see that I have this new list called list 80 with no items in it. And if I go ahead and open that up, I can look at the settings behind it to see what kind of fields were created by the tool i2P Express that we wrote. So if we just go into list settings here, you can see all of the different fields that created. And the one I'm really interested in is this employee name. And if you notice here, it's no longer a required field. And that's a good thing. We didn't want that over there. So I now have a new list that's ready to accept data that I export out from my source site here, over here in my absence request, into my new target, the list 80. Okay, so let's go ahead and walk through how to do that. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, and now we're going to move down the left side here to export data. This is my source site, and I'm going to go ahead and connect to that. Okay, and I'm going to export the data out from my source, and then I'm going to want to import that into my target. So it'll take it a minute to go through and find all of those different libraries and lists that I had. And in this case, I'm going to use that absence request. And I'm going to export out all of the data into an Excel spreadsheet that I can then go through and clean up if I want to. Now, I can also include the item level security. If you have security set up on a form level basis, we also support that. By default, we'll take whatever the library or list had associated with it. But if you click this, it'll actually look at every single item we export. And when we import that, it'll make sure to have the same security. Let's go ahead and export this data. And as it's doing it, I'll pause and come back when it's finished. And I'm just going to, before I do that, I'm going to give it a place that I want to save this data. So I'll call it Dave's data. And go ahead and do that. And we'll export this. I'll be right back with you. Okay, I'm back. And what happened was that our tool went ahead and exported out all of the data from that source list that where you have the InfoPath forms in today. You can see there's 7. And if I select it and just select my formatting so I can read what these things are, you'll see that I have the date and the dates of the absence. These are all fields from that form that we have. And I can also look and see a few other bits of information. And so this is how we set up our map. Now the thing we want to do is import this data into our target, because remember, we're trying to get it into a format that looks like this, where we have the data migrated over, and when we click on it, we can make a Power App now that's going to make the same functionality but with the modern tools we want to get to, right? So the next trick is going to be, we're going to have to migrate over the data from the source into the list, that list 80 that we created. And to do that, we use the import data tool. And so here we go ahead and select the target that we want to go to, and we connect to it. I'm going to pause and get everything set up and be right back. Okay, I'm back again now. I'm here at the import data list I've connected, and I can see a couple of lists here in my target. There's my list 80, and I'll just pick my title. And I know my mapping. Let's go ahead and pick that. It was the Dave's data. I had that all set up for me as well. I've had this thing mapped out. And I'll go ahead and it's all ready to go. I'm going to import my data, and I'll take a look right when it's done here. Be right back. Okay, I'm back, and I can see what it's doing here. It's going ahead and importing in the data from my CSV file where I had saved all that out. And now if we go to list 80, we should see all of that data along with the attachments sitting there. So let's take a look and see if it made it across. I go into my site contents, and I'll take a look at that list number 80, and I can see, guess what? There's 7 items there. That's great. That's what we wanted to see. And I can see all of my data here, as well as any attachments that I had in the old one. And if I come down here and take a look, I can see there's my attachment right there. So the tool is able to grab attachments as well as the data. It also handles repeating sections, etc. I'll just go ahead and open that up. It's just a copy of our logo, a giant copy of it there. So now the next step would be for us to create the Power App based on this form, right? And you'll go ahead and replicate the capability that you had in InfoPath over in this new Power App paradigm, right? So let's close that, and let's take a look again one more time at how it looks in PowerApps. And I have already started doing that here on this migrated AppSense request. And I'm going to go ahead and grab this one and open it up. And so the purpose of this video was to show you how we could get the data and the schema from an old InfoPath-based list into a modern list that can be used with PowerApps, and also how we can get the attachments. There's other videos on repeating sections, etc. So it'll handle very complex things. And the way we do that is with our tool called i2P Express. And this tool has 3 different versions with it that you can purchase, as well as an inventory. There's one that does up to 10 forms. There's one that does up to 20 forms. There's another that does unlimited. And then there's a version that just does the inventory, but doesn't actually do the migration for you. So if you just wanted to find your forms, you can buy a version of the tool that'll do that for you as well. Okay, so hopefully you learned a lot about our tool today. This is Dave Chenault with Skylight Systems, and I migrated a simple InfoPath list into a new list. I created the new list and migrated all that data. I was able to clean it up in Excel before I migrated it in, and now I'm ready to make my new Power App. If you have any questions, you can email us at info@skylightsystems.com here on the screen. You can see more information about the tool at our main website, look underneath apps, or you can just give us a call and we'll help you out. So thanks again for your time. Dave Chenault, Skylight Systems, signing off.